All right, everybody. It is Friday, which means lots of trades and a long video. Um, just a reminder, I'm not a financial advisor, and this is not financial advice, and this is for entertainment purposes only. I know y'all are sick of me about as much as I'm sick of YouTube right now and all of my catch up videos for today. Hopefully, I never have to do this many videos in one day. Though I know I had one more outstanding that I wanted to do and I've been wanting to do for weeks, which is the project video. I did prep all of it today, but I never actually ended up doing it. But I have drilled this weekend, so I wanted to get out all these videos, so pace yourself because I'm sure you're not going to watch all of them, but still. I know I'm not going to have time or want to. If I can even make it to drill in the morning, when I'm done, I'm sure I'm just going to want to go to bed. So here we are. Since it is Friday, we're going to go back and forth. I can't guarantee we're not going to find any issues or errors in here, but I usually figure them out really quick. But we're going to start out with AIYY here, and we can see this is just adding. And I'm sorry, I don't have this sheet set up because I was doing something on the daily. And then I was opening everything up looking at stuff, which then reminds me I got to do something. All right. So we can see here for AIYY, I'm not going to read all the closing prices if that's okay with y'all, since this is already going to be a long video. But they added the 4,765 contracts to the short call with the strike price of $26. They brought in 148,000 in premium for that. And you can see the color code starting to change, which now I realize I didn't change the color codes here for next week. So I'll have to remember to do that. So I'm sorry. If any of you get sick watching me do that, I know I would. I'm just going to do that to remind me to change the color codes next week or for the next week's videos. But the reason I want to point this out because we can see what's the April 19th is in green the second, but when I change the color codes, it's going to be in yellow because that's going to be the next week. And that's significant here for our synthetics because this one we're way under our synthetic. We're under it by $10. So if we close that out today, it would cost us $9.8 million to close this synthetic out, which is one of the reasons why this stock just keeps tanking. But anyway, right now we have our three short calls that will expire next Friday at $26, $26.50, and $27. And we're currently underneath those strikes by 3, 5, and 7%. And then we'll go over, see what we have for AMDY. So we had three that expired today, three short calls that expired today. And I feel like these columns are a lot wider than normal because I don't recall having to scroll as much. But the good news here is to close all these out, they only paid 1 cent a share to close those out. So that's good. Now they took, let's see. Yeah, so they rolled all of those to next Friday. So it looked like they already had that short call. Oops. Let's go over to our holdings for AMDY here. And so you can see there where they added those. They brought in 1.2 million in premium. So they only have one short call for next week at that strike price of 177.50. And that's where all their contracts are. And this synthetic's in purple, so this one will not expire until May. So we've got, wow, I was going to say 2 months, but we only have a month and a half. This time is flying by. It's actually so funny because I said something to Max earlier. We were messaging, and he said, drill again? Like, yes, drill again. I feel like it just happened too. Time is flying. All right, let's look over at, see if we had trades. In fact, no, I know we had trades from the daily roundup. We had trades for everybody but Tesla. So AMZ here. So the first two lines, sorry about that, but the first two lines, I don't know. I'm puzzled because I thought these were European options, and I know yesterday we saw that JPMO, they bought some shares there, and I know we've seen it in the past. This has been, I feel like it's been a while since we've seen this happen, but now here we are with AMZ, and they bought on the first line they bought 100 shares of stock. Of course, the one yesterday for JPMO actually said buy C, buy to close, but it was stock. This one just says B for buy, right? But anyway, and then they also show, and this is separate from the rest of the things, a short call that expired today for one share or one contract. And then they paid $2.70 a piece for that, or $2.70. Yeah. So I'm not sure, honestly, what what's going on. Maybe they have, some of these are American style. I don't know. Let's see what we had over here. Close price. So it closed at 185.07. So I'm not sure. And I guess I'm too tired to wrap my head around it today. And actually, I can say that I've seen them buy stock. I'd never recall seeing any of them buy like a short call like this on the day of expiration, like one here. I don't think I've ever seen that. I feel like I would remember. But anyway, so then we go into the stocks that, the short calls that were going to expire today. And that's the next little section there, and the synthetics that go with them. So it looks like they paid $3.10 a piece per share for the 3,515 contracts. And then they paid 67 cents a share for the 30 contracts. So if we look here, so what I say, 310. So Amazon closed at 185, and that's 182.50. Okay, so they must have closed them out earlier in the day when the stock was up even more. All right, so that's what happened there, and then below that is where they've added, well, let's see how many we closed out. Okay, so 35.45, so those were rolled till next week's expiration, next Friday's expiration there. I feel like I'm zoomed in too much for myself, that I can't even hardly see them. Sorry for those on your phone. And then so we have those synthetic positions that were rolled up from 175 to the 185 strike there. And those were all adding. So if we go over here, yeah. Okay, so they closed out the 175 altogether. Yeah, it makes sense because they only had 3,545. So these, hold on. Yeah, I don't know why that one over there says what it says, because these closed ones here are 175, and these open ones here are 185. But overall, our trays are 2.5 million there. Yeah, and those say 185. Sorry, I got so many things. I don't know what's where. Oh, they're way out here. Yeah, I don't even know right now. But I know that that should not say closed. Okay, I apologize. I went to look on my computer, and the reason this is messed up right here is because on the trades tab, I had moved those trays around for AMZ. And when I did that, I didn't copy over the key. I just moved the already changed data, so that's why. So anyway, I just wanted to make sure it wasn't going to be a bigger problem. It was just this where I'd moved stuff around. So we have the short call that'll expire next Friday with a 190 strike, and we're currently 3% below that. So if we move over to Aptly, all right. So Aptly here, they've closed the short calls and probably rolled them to next week. So let's see, they had the exact same strike prices, and they just changed up the count, or they changed up the quantity of shares. So they put 2,500 contracts at the 172.50 and 575 at the 175 strike price there. So we go over to the holdings. Those closed positions, of course, are not here, but we can see these. So we have the short calls, both of those, and we're below those 2 and 3%. Sorry, I realized that I didn't change a formula earlier, and that's why those were saying added versus new. So if we move on down to Coney here, you can see where they closed out all of the short calls for that expired today. Let's see, we closed at 240.90, so we were underneath all of those, so that's great. They ended up paying 4.2 and 1 cent, 1 cent for the majority, to get those closed out. So that's always good. And then they rolled those to 1 strike price for next Friday. So they brought in $8 million by doing in premium. Obviously they paid a little bit to close those other ones out, but if we move here, we can see that those old ones are gone. We have the new one there, the 257.50, and we're currently 6% below that. But we have these synthetics that'll close in a couple of weeks, and those are at 250. So we want the stock price to be above 250 to close those out. Otherwise, you can see right now it cost us $13.65 million to close those out. Let's just make sure we don't have any closed for Dizzo here. I'm going to make sure these aren't formulas, yeah, because I don't want it to hit midnight and then lose all my data. But we were looking at Dizzo, so no, we don't have any closed out there. So we'll go back over here. And it looks like we're good on our trades tabs. So here you can see that they added 265 contracts to the short call they already had at the 121 strike price, in which we're 2% under right now, but then they created a new short call where they added 265 contracts. I guess they had ones that they didn't use the other day, which makes sense because that's another thing that we saw this week is they were only using half of the shares. I think it was on Thursday. It might have been another day too with some of them, but so anyway, they've done that. Yeah, because if we add these two together, that's why I hesitated. If we add those together, they do match the synthetics. So we have the 120 and 121 strike. We're 1 and 2% underneath those right now. and our synthetics not until May. So let's check out our Phoebe trade. So yeah, we had a lot on this one. Let's make sure we didn't. No, that one didn't have one on the bottom line. All right. So the top 4 lines are their synthetic positions. So you see the same date, but they had to roll those. So they rolled them to the 525 strike from the 505 strike, and it was for 1,140. And of course, this will help them pay for the contract, the short calls that they had to close out down here. Because if you see, Meta closed today at 527, and as we've been tracking all week, all of these closed out above the strike price. So they ended up having to pay to close these $2.6 million. So they ended up having to roll these, and they ended up bringing in $2.2 million. And then, we had this one down. Then they sold this short call at the bottom. So in the end, out of all of those trades and all that money, they only brought in $212,000 because they were over every single short call strike. So if we look over here, oh, I was already there. We can see that we have 2 strikes now for our synthetics. We have a 515 and a 525. And then we have 1 short call that expires next Friday with a strike price of 535, in which we're only 1% under. So I don't know how that one's going to play out, but we will see. Let's check out GUI. So GUI had a short call that had to be closed out here with a 152.50 strike, and they had to pay 71 cents a share to close those out. So 152.50, and it looks like Google actually closed at 152.50, so they must have closed those out during the day when the stock price was higher. So we see here, yeah, I guess we did have 2 synthetics on this one. We had the short call here with the strike price of 155. All of our contracts are there, and we're 2% under that, which is only $2.50. So let's look at our JPMO trades. I think we just had those new ones, but let's make sure. Nope, we did have some that closed out. So we did have short calls that expired today here. And let's see, 197.45. So that top one, they ended up paying 27 cents to close, and these other 2, they paid a penny a piece to close those out. So not bad. And then they rode those until, let's see, was it all of them? Yeah. That's, why are we 2 shares off? So let's look at that. JPMO. All right. So it's interesting. Oh, you know why? I bet that's because, remember, I said that they actually purchased shares yesterday. I bet. Sorry about that. I was wondering where that went earlier. That's the 200 contracts. But it was 200. Yep, 200. So that's where 2 contracts went, I guess. So that's why those do not match up there. Okay, so they don't match up yet. We have a new, of course we have cash and everything like that. But we have 2 new short calls for this next week. 500 and 130. The 500's at the 205 strike price, and the 130's at the 207.50 strike price. So we're currently 4 and 5% below those strike prices. If we move on to Murney, you see they closed out the short calls. And it looks like they closed them out for 2 cents for the majority, 1 cent for 100 contracts. And they rolled all of those to 1 strike price for next week. That expires next Friday at 107. So if we look over here, and it looks like we didn't have any short calls before that, so that's the only short call that we have for next week, and we are currently 4% below that strike price. And MSFO. So they closed out the 2 short calls that we had at 425 and 427.50, rolled those to next Friday at 430 strike price. All of them, and let's see, it looks like we paid 70 cents a piece for the 230 contracts and 6 cents for the 880 contracts. Yeah, so we ended up closing the day 52 cents over the one, and actually under the other, but these are closed out during the day. So if we move on over here, so we can see that we have a total for MSFO, a total of 3 short calls for the week: 430, 432, 432.50, and a 435 strike price. So we're currently under those by 1 and 2%. The majority of the contracts are sitting at the 430 strike price. Misty. Oh, there's so many trades for Misty. Look at all of that. All right, so they had to pay to close out all of these short calls. So we had 6 of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We had 7 short calls. So if we keep scrolling, it's scrolling. Okay. So we paid anywhere from 1 to 15 cents to close those out. So that's not bad. So those were the ones there in the middle. And then you see we have them, well, I didn't count. So the bottom 2 are our short calls. So if we do that, we had 340. Okay, so these 40 must have went with these 40 on the top. So they must have had to sell some, or people have sold out of the fund. So they ended up having to sell 40. And then the rest of those were just because of expiring. And then those were rolled to next week. And then 290 were rolled to the 1705 strike price, while 10 of them were rolled to the 1750 strike price. Which then, sort of makes me wonder, is that a typo? Just because looking, they brought in the same exact premium of 44.10, and it's just weird. I don't know. Well, they had $5 increments before, but I don't know. I found that odd. I guess it's a coincidence. So if we look over at the holdings now for Misty, You can see here where they closed out 40 of those synthetics, and they added those 2 new short calls, and then they already had a short call that expires next week. So we have the 1705, 1750, and the 1920. So we're 16, 18, and 25% below the strike prices. Of course, unfortunately, in 2 weeks we have the synthetics expiring, and we are underneath those. But hopefully those will come up by then, be closer to the Bitcoin halving. But right now, if we had to close them out, it would cost $11 million to do so, because we're 15% below them. If you want to see to the side. All right, and then we move on to Nephi. So Nephi had a lot also. So, I'm just looking. Yeah. All right, so they rolled 725 contracts of the synthetic from the 610 to the 635 price, strike prices. Then they rolled all the short calls that were going to expire today to next Friday. And those strike prices, we moved from 625.50 and 630 to 650 and 655 strike price there. It's a lot of the same thing, just on different lines, different number of contracts. So when we go over here, it'll look a lot cleaner. So when we go here, you can see all of those new lines there now, and we only have 4. So the 2 short calls, 260, the 650 and the 655, 2 and 3% below, and those are sort of split evenly. And then, of course, our new synthetic position there. So I'll move on to NVIDIA. NVIDIA, you see they closed out all the short calls, 930 to 995, and they moved all of them to one strike price of $910. You see it cost these 1, 2, or 3 cents to close them out this week. We have 4,070 contracts there. So if we look at the holdings, you can see that we're down to that 1 short call there, and we're roughly 3% below that strike price right now, which is about $30. If we go on to OARC closed out their short call that expired with a $49 strike price for 2 cents a share. And then they created a new short call and added to the other. So let's go look at the holdings. So the first one right there is a new at a $48.50 strike price, which are 3% under. They added to the $49 strike price, and we're 4% under that, and they also have a $49.50 strike price, and we're under that by 5%. We move on to PayPay. Closed out all the short calls, 66, 67, and 68 strike prices. Cost 1, 2, and 3 cents a share to close those out. And then open up a new short call there. So they moved them all to one strike price of $67, and they'll expire next Friday, and we're currently 3% below that strike price. If we move on to Block, you can see that they closed out 130 contracts. I guess some people sold out of this one. So they closed out 130 of the synthetic and the short call. And then it looks like they also had, they also just added to that one, which it's probably not showing up over there because of this closed, and it's got 2 transactions there. But it was 1,970. So yeah, but we'll see it over here in the total. So we can see we have a total of 3,840 contracts for our synthetic and the short call. So our $80 strike, and we're currently 4% below that strike price. So Tesla did not have any trades, so we had short calls here that will expire next week at the strike prices of 172.50 and 182.50. We're under those by 4 and 10%, and you can see that these are split evenly between those two strike prices. And our last main one here, we have Zomo, and then we'll just look to see if there were any closed. Okay, so we have some synthetic lines that were rolled. So the first two lines, they rolled that from a 115 strike to a 120 strike. And it's because they had short calls that they had to pay to close. So they needed funding to cover those. So that's why they closed those other synthetics there. So you see they had, let's see, 121.37 stock price, and the strike prices were 116 and 118. So they exceeded both of those. So you can see they had to pay $5.60 a share for the 85 contracts and $3.61 a share for the 1,400 contracts. And they've rolled those to next week to a 124 strike. So if we look at Zomo here, we'll see all new prices here, that synthetic and short call, and we're currently 2% under that short call strike. And then if we go down here, we have YMAG that closed today at $20.46, and YMax that closed at $21.34. Sorry for the long one. I know it's Friday and it's long. But hopefully that's the last video that you have to see me publish this weekend. Anyway, I hope y'all have a great weekend. Bye.